walking the serpentine path, following the footsteps of the ancestors, walking the serpentine path, making our way back home. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho. Following the serpentine path. Life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Waudia Seed, and I'm a plant walker, song keeper, word weaver, artesana, visual and performance artist, womb wisdom keeper, and your guide on this serpentine path of life. Together, we'll dive deep into all things related to plant medicine, ancestral reconnection, intergenerational healing, womb sovereignty and bodily autonomy, rites of passage and initiation, time travel, shape-shifting, dimension hopping, the reclamation of our collective earth-based practices, and the ongoing, never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Welcome to the serpentine path where the ancestors have called us back to. Let's start at the end and find our way back home together. Hello, everyone. I am incredibly excited to share this interview that I got to do with my dear friend and sister, Ana Carolina Martinez, also known as Ana del Amor. And in this conversation, we talk about our journeys of healing disordered eating patterns by breaking free from the rigidity of dogmatic veganism and embracing the life-giving vitality of animal foods for thriving reproductive health. We reflect on our collective and individual time spent in indigenous communities, and we discuss how ancestral wisdom and embodied intuition guided us to dissolve our rigidity, come into right relationship with eating meat, and rediscover balance in true nourishment. This episode is an invitation to heal the disconnect between body and mind, honor our biological rhythms, and celebrate the deep connection between nourishment, vitality, and thriving life. I really, really enjoyed recording it, and I really hope that you enjoy listening. All right, let's get into it. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to have my dear friend and sister, Ana, here on the podcast to share with you guys a little bit of her own story. We're going to get into a lot of stuff today. And we had an incredible time talking before starting to record, and a beautiful phone call earlier this week to catch up. So I'm immensely grateful to you, Ana, for being here. Thank you so much. Welcome. It's such a blessing to see your sweet face and to share. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel so grateful to be here, Clarita. Story sharing and telling is such a potent form of medicine. I always learn so much through hearing stories, and I'm grateful to be here with you today.
Yay! Amazing. All right, let's get into it because we have a lot that we want to talk about, as always. All of our conversations always go. All right, I would love to give you a chance to introduce yourself. And so I want to ask, if your ancestors were here right now with us, because they, of course, always are, how would they introduce you and what role would they say that you're fulfilling in your family's lineage?
Mm. Yeah, I feel my ancestors with me
Mm,
around all of the time. And if they were introducing me to a group of people, they would say, "This is Ana Carolina Martinez, and she comes from a Colombian Irish American family with long lineages to many places of the world, and that she is a bridge." Um, like Gloria Ansaldúa says of her own experience, I feel like I sort of live at these borderlands where I'm not here nor there, though I'm all encompassing. And I really do feel like this bridge between cultures and ways of being, traditions and experiences.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And through this bridge making, I am able to bring together my two lineages that come from different places with very different histories and make peace and
mm-hmm.
healing.
That's so beautiful. And it's true. I do see you as such a bridge person, and I also see myself as a bridge person in a very different way. But I think that that's something that the collective is calling for right now, of like, what does it mean to be a bridge, and what does it mean to be a bridge builder, and what does it mean to be someone who can straddle many different worlds and many different realities and many different truths as well. I
Mm.
think that's something that I love so much about you and that I learn a lot about, is that you're so firmly rooted in multiple different truths at one time. I feel like you're capable of holding all of your lineages in your body, in your strength, in your spirit, and being so firmly rooted in them, and not valuing one over the other, or disrespecting one, or saying one is evil and one is like putting one on a pedestal necessarily, but really being able to hold the truth of like all that's inside of you, and to find the beauty within all of it, and to interweave it as well. I really see you as a weaver of so many
Mm.
different cultures. And I know that you also do weave, and you're an artist in so many ways, and you're a creatrix. And I feel like that's something that you're always doing, is interweaving that web of all the realities that you embody as this beautiful being. So I also completely got chills when you started talking about your ancestors. Yeah. I'm so grateful that they all existed so that you could be here today talking with me.
Mhm.
Cool. So, do you want to share? Actually, I want to share a little bit about like our friendship and how we found each other. And you can obviously chime in because it's our collective relationship. But we met, let's see, June 2023. Yeah,
Yes,
technically. But
technically.
that's when we met, but we had crossed paths the year before
In ceremony.
in ceremony at Abuelo Kirawin's birthday. So we had
Yes.
technically been in the same place at the same time. Abuelo Kirawin's birthday, his 109th birthday, in June, July of 2022.
Hmm.
And then we like crossed paths again the next year, and we did actually meet that time.
We really connected.
Yeah, we actually like did the thing, and I think, well, the first thing I remember was that the first night, I think you had like a really bad insect bite from a conga, these like huge bullet ants. And I was like, ay, pobrecita, like the conga got her.
One on each foot.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Yeah, one on each foot.
Oh my God. The jungle was like, welcome. Wait, I thought that it was only 1 foot. Okay. Had I known then what I know now, I would have just gone and gotten you a cap of gasoline with a bunch of salt, and I would have put it on your wound, and you would have been totally fine.
Huh.
Jungle,
Wow, I never would have known that.
jungle tip that I learned from Cacique, actually, from one of the elders.
Mm.
But yeah, I remember seeing you, and I was like, oh no, this poor girl, like she's not going to be able to drink in ceremony tonight. But you were also really at peace. You were like, I'm just going to chill. I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to ease my way in, which is not the energy that most people come to the jungle with. Most
Mm.
people come to the jungle with like, I'm here, let's go, like, ego death, rip me out of my soul. And you really showed up with like this kind of gentler vibe. You were like,
Mm.
I'm gonna ease my way in. It's all good. I'm gonna rest. And I was like, all right. And then I think it was the next night before ceremony started, people were singing a lot and we sang together. Did we
Mhm.
sing? What song did we sing together?
It's the song that says Gracias por la vida, and it goes into a verse singing to Shiva.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. Gracias por la vida. Gracias por la.
Hmm.
Yep. But yeah. And it was funny because I had never known anyone else who knew that song. You were the first person outside of the person who I originally learned it from who knew it. And I was like, what? She knows this song? That's so crazy. And I remember hearing you sing and in the jungle, it's like it can be very masculine energy and the music can be very masculine dominated, male dominated. And it was this beautiful moment where I kind of looked over at you and I saw you singing and I was like, oh, I have a sister to sing with here.
Oh, I felt the exact same way. I
Mm-hmm.
remember before I shared that song, I saw you and one other sister, and y'all were singing, and she was playing the flute. And I remember looking at y'all and just thinking, wow, like this is who I want to be with. This is who I want to be learning from and sharing with. And I remember hearing your voice and being so impacted in my heart in the most beautiful way. Like, wow, this is the voice of an angel. She's doing really beautiful work here. I can just feel. And then I like slowly came into y'all's field and was just sitting there, like enjoying the music. And I remember the sister playing the flute was like, would you like to sing? Would you like to share a song? And I was like, okay, sure. Just dove into it, and it felt so, so alive for me.
Yeah. That was Cindy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the mother of my goddaughter, who
Yes.
I'm sure one day I'll have her on this podcast. What a crazy life story she has.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, I remember that. And I remember, after that, you stayed in the jungle for like a whole month, which very few people do, especially very few women. Um, and I had a sister, and it was really, really cool. And I remember being in ceremonies like that whole month, seeing your voice grow and seeing your confidence grow and seeing how much you transformed and feeling it in me too, of like, there is space for women here to share our voices.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one of the greatest gifts to have found you. And then our friendship has kind of just evolved from there. And we've both put in the effort to nurture and nourish and to maintain that connection and to deepen it and to grow and to learn from one another. So again, thank you. All right, so that's my side of things and kind of, you know, the experience that I've had with our friendship. I would love to kind of open up the space for you to share a little bit more about what your path has looked like how you kind of arrived to the jungle to meet me at that point, like anything that you want to share before your journey that led up to being able to come to the jungle and to be present there for that whole month for us to connect, and then kind of what your journey has looked like since then, and what threads you've been weaving in your life, what like those really important things have been kind of traversing through and tracking through all of your experiences. So feel free to share whatever you would like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I grew up in the South, in the suburbs of Atlanta, and I grew up with a mom who really values connection with nature, though in a very different way than I connect with nature today. I was raised in an atheist household with my father, who didn't live with us, who was Catholic, though not really, really on that path, just like, culturally Catholic. And my maternal grandpa has lived in Colorado my entire life in the mountains, in the high mountains. And every summer of my childhood, we visited my grandpa in Estes Park. And I think it was through these summers of running around on the mountain and seeing the cacti and the deer and the elk and every now and then a moose. I really just loved this feeling of being outside and being able to run around and see the trees and the plants. And my grandpa would always take us around and point out the different wildflowers and the different kinds of trees. And we would stop and smell the ponderosas and decide, does it smell like vanilla, chocolate, or strawberry to us today? So I grew up with a family that really values nature, though I was also taught that what we see is what there is, and there's nothing beyond that. There is no God, there are no ghosts or spirits, there is no like hell or heaven. Um, and it was sort of like a blank slate, so it's pretty cool that I was able to grow up in that way.
Mhm.
And when I started coming into teenagerhood, like a little bit later, like 16, 17, I started just feeling there has to be more out there. There has to be. And I became really interested in yoga and just this, yeah, really ancient lineage from India, from present day India, where teachings and practices were passed down from teacher to student to teacher to student. And I started getting really into yoga, and then that actually brought me into veganism. And the veganism led me to wanting to travel somehow. And so I started looking for like vegan communities and eco villages. I was also very like concerned about what was going on to the environment, like what humans were doing on a massive scale to our environment. So I started looking for all of these things, and I was really called to Central America and Colombia because of my ancestry, my heritage. And I remember I chose to go to Costa Rica and I went to this vegan animal sanctuary. And that was my first like international travel. Um, and yeah, it was an interesting experience. I got to learn a lot of new things. I got to be around really sweet animals. Um, and I remember I had like 1 month of this international travel planned, and then I was just like, I'm just gonna be a free spirit and let the wind blow me wherever after this animal sanctuary time is over. And I ended up landing on this beach and becoming friends with artesanos and like circus people. And this was one of my first exposure to people living a really different lifestyle than I could have ever imagined. Like when I was starting to get into yoga, I recognized that I didn't want the lifestyle that's sort of prescribed by the dominant culture. I was like, I don't want a 9 to 5 just so that I can live in a house that's like massive and I'm not even in it most of the time because I'm at this like cubicle office working on something that doesn't fulfill me. And so I came to these circus folks and just had so much fun, like flowing with flow toys all of the time and just bumming it on the beach and sharing food together and just being so relaxed all of the time. And I was kind of like, I don't think this is my forever, but it's really fun for now. And it showed me that there's other ways of living. So then I became really interested in finding more like intentional communities and spiritual communities. And I came across this intentional retreat center in Guatemala at Lago Atitlan called Mystical Yoga Farm. And I ended up going there and I ended up staying for in Guatemala for almost 2 years and at the farm for almost a year and a half. And that was a place where I think everything started coming together for me. And I started really finding my footing on my path
Mhm.
and coming into purpose,
Mhm.
into sourcing my authority from within, um, into my voice, into singing songs. Song is really vital there. There's a few like main core tenets and practices that they embody at the Mystical Yoga Farm, and I would say that singing in heart song circles is definitely a really big one. Yoga is another one. It is a vegan community, so veganism is another one. They're totally zero waste, so all of the trash that comes onto the retreat center is processed there, and then they create like eco bricks and things of that nature, and then they build with that. So that's a really another core tenet is the zero waste, and they have beautiful, expansive herb gardens and a food forest that's being actively developed on this upper property. Um, and yeah, they really value like awareness, boundaries, communication, and personal growth and community sufficiency and growth. So that's where so much started coming together for me, and I found my path.
Yeah.
And that eventually brought me to the jungle. And that's where we met and where I was able to meet Abuelo Kerwin and Abuela Maria and all of the Kofan family, which really, really just deeply changed my life and my perspectives and brought me into some really deep healing that was like beyond my imagination of accessing just a few years prior.
Mm,
Yeah.
so beautiful. And let's see, we spent that month together in the jungle. Let's see, July 2023. So what has your path looked like since you left? It's been pretty much like almost a year and a half at this point. And
hmm
where are you these days? Because you haven't been so much of an international traveler. You were a big traveler for a long time. You were out of the States and you were really deep in reconnecting to your Latin culture, right? In Central and South America. And now you've been back in the States for this past year and a half. So what has that integration process looked like for you? And what are you orienting yourself towards? And how are you weaving those worlds? As we talked about in the beginning, what has that been like?
Yeah, great question. So I came straight back from the jungle and went to my home in Atlanta, and I was enrolled in university. I had done like 1 or 2 years of university when I was 18, kind of like what many people do. And I knew that I couldn't keep doing that. And that's when I started traveling. And I decided, I have this scholarship. I love learning and I want to go to university and just see what happens there. And so I was studying Latin American and Caribbean studies, as well as I was in a sustainability certificate program. And the first year or so was so engaging and exciting. There's something so beautiful about being in a classroom and having this like expert in a field that you're also interested in, just speaking to you, like just directly transmitting all of this information. Yeah, it's incredible. Though after about a year, I started feeling like I was in this glass cage where I was reading and writing and researching about the things that I actually wanted to be living.
Experience.
And I felt like this glass cage was preventing me. It's like anytime I wanted to like make an impact or create waves of change, I felt like my hand just like touched the glass and couldn't move to the other side. And I started really feeling the constraints around just academia and what's accepted and what's not. And my professors, the majority of them were incredibly understanding and like really willing to work with me. They recognized that I wasn't the traditional 19-year-old student, that I was very different than all of the other students. And um, yeah, I decided to not continue on in the pursuit of my degree, which was a really tough decision for me.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that being something that you were really grappling with for a while. And I'm kind of like anti-authority, whatever, fuck it, like just follow your dream kind of thing. But I was witnessing you in that decision-making process and it was tough. Like, do you want to speak a little bit more on it?
Sure. Yeah. Um, there was this part of me that really wanted to receive that degree, Like I've put in 3.5 years of work into the university system. Like, let me get something tangible out of it. Though ultimately, what I sank into and what led me to make the decision of not continuing on was that I've learned and received what I need from the school system. I got everything I need. I've learned what I can, and continuing on is just going to be a detriment to myself and my health and well-being at this point. And I feel like I'm complete here.
Yeah, I'm good.
And yeah, it was this deep, like, okay, I need to trust myself. Like I know what's best for me. Um, and when it comes to those big decisions that, can alter the course of your life, it's like, okay, how much can I sink into trusting myself? So it was big. It was a big decision, and I'm really glad I made that decision.
And that was like a year ago at this point.
Exactly. So just about a year ago, I was finally at the light of the end of the tunnel because I had come from this environment of being in the jungle and sitting on the front porch and talking and sharing stories and listening to elders in a certain kind of way. And then coming into this very rigorous academic environment where I was listening to professors in a very different way. And so that it was such a stark contrast, and I actually didn't give myself a lot of space for integration from like between the jungle and then integrating back into, say, like everyday life, quote unquote. Um, and so I found myself really struggling. It was hard. It was challenging. I was feeling isolated in the suburbs. I was feeling tired. I was feeling like this isn't where I meant to be. And then in September, Abuela Maria passed away.
Oh yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
So that also really was impactful, um, and really sad, also really beautiful in a way too. And so this time last year, like mid-December, I was finally done with finals. Like I had just like put in 2, 3 weeks of work just trying to get a passing grade so that I wouldn't have to pay the the tuition that my scholarship had paid for back. So like my goal was just get passing grades, finish these finals, and be done. And I did it. I I was able to write and research about such interesting threads. Um, like water in Chile and how different mining operations are affecting community authority and on water, specifically indigenous nations authority on water. And I was able to do a deep dive into the Wirarica Nation in Wirikuta in the desert of Mexico and how they're yeah, basically how like colonization impacted them or didn't impact them in comparison to other nations in similar areas, like in that Nayarit, Jalisco region. Yeah, so I got to write and read about really cool things, and then I was like, and I'm done. I'm done with this. So that was really liberating. And then I went into this period of like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, how do I choose to um, move my energy and spend my time? And I had been working for a family who also in September had a baby. And I was working for them and really supporting the house and supporting the mom postpartum and helping a little bit here and there with childcare and also helping in their homestead with their garden and their sheep and chickens and also creating community events on that land. And I realized, wow, I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm loving this aspect of supporting this family who just went through this really big transformative process where they welcomed another being into their lives, into their home. And I remember in the jungle, Claire, you sort of planted a seed into my consciousness. I don't remember exactly what it was, though. You were just like, I could really see you like in birth work, in postpartum work. Like it's sort of the next natural step in evolution of the work that you're doing currently, which is around womb health and cyclical living and awareness. And I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I didn't give much thought to it. And then I just naturally stepped into it by stepping up for this family. And then I was like, whoa, this is actually what I want to be doing as like my vocation. I feel really called to this space. And since then, I've been actively working towards making that a reality, of making that a big offering that I can share with my community, as well as the other really, really big thread that I've been just so rooted in is earth skills and the wider earth skills community. And earth skills is a very just broad term for anything that connects us to the earth and is like a skill that we're learning and integrating that can help us to live more sustainably with the earth. And a lot of these earth skills are very ancestral traditions, coming from many different cultures, that the wider earth skills community is really trying to revive and like integrate into our everyday culture and homes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, two things. It's so funny that you brought up the fact that I kind of like planted the seed with birth work because I was literally thinking about it and I was like, I want to talk about that. It was
Mm.
something that I recognized in you because it was something that I recognized in myself, and that I'm also walking like a birth worker path. And I think that women who are doing that just know it in one another, even if we're not fully embodying that, like I am currently a traditional midwife, right? Like we know that that's our life path, that's always been our life path. And so I just saw it and you and I was like, wait, she's a birth worker because I am too. And like, you clock someone. And it was so funny because you got back to the States and you're like, I'm doing this postpartum stuff. And I was like, of course you are, because that is your path. And that's one of many paths in your life. But like, I just witnessed it in you in the way that you care so deeply about womb wellness, which is something that we'll kind of segue into. Um, it aligns very much too with the earth skills work that you're learning, that I think that we should all be learning. And it's something that I talk about a lot on this podcast, which is that like every single one of us and every single one of our ancestors were once indigenous to somewhere, and we all had indigenous life ways that have been stripped from our families and from our traditions and from our cultures through different waves of colonization. Wherever you are in the world, at one point in time, your ancestors had been colonized by some other group of people that came to them and said, like, this way of doing it is wrong because we're deciding it, and now you're going to do it this way. And we're going to pull you from the earth. That's
Mm.
essentially what colonization is at the end of the day. We're ripping you away from your connection to the land. And I think that maybe this is a good way to kind of segue of like those two things that you care so deeply about, right? Like womb wellness, women's health overall, birth and like matrescence, and the childbearing continuum, right? As well. And all of that includes like menarche, menstruation, leading into menopause, all of that. And then earth skills, being in right relationship with the earth, being in right relationship with animals, with plants, with the waters, with the land, all of it, right? And then where does veganism fit into all of that? Because you were vegan for a
Woo.
long time and you are not anymore.
Mm.
So let's talk about it. What happened?
Mm.
It
Woof. Okay.
was a big setup for you.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, so I was vegan for quite some time. Maybe like 5 or 6 years, plus maybe another few months of like just vegetarian sort of. Um, how does all of this play? Wow.
I know, big question. Take whatever part you want to chew on.
Yeah, so what I'll start with is that for a while towards the end of my veganism, I went vegan when I was maybe like 18 or so. So I was very much still like in this period of development, of developing in my body, in my brain, in my spirit.
Mhm.
And I noticed that I started feeling better in my gut like in the first year of veganism or so, though then that quickly went away and it no longer held true. And I think maybe like around the fourth year of veganism, I started just like anytime I would smell like eggs or meat, I would start like salivating. Like I would really be like, wow, that smells so good. Though I had built these walls up in my mind around what is food and what is not food. And at that time in my life, meat was murder, and there was no way around it. And eggs were stealing from chickens and taking what was not ours. And this was just so true for me. And I would scream it from the hilltops. I would tell everyone that that was the way, that veganism was the way and the only way.
Rigidity.
Yeah, very, very rigid. I was extremely staunch vegan too. Like I wasn't one of those vegans who was like, yeah, I sometimes have honey or I sometimes eat fish. I was the vegan who would tell everyone about it and would not wear even secondhand leather or even, eat honey, any of those things. I think I like for a few years I was like even not even doing palm oil because I could slowly connect that to how that was not vegan. But anyways, um I was salivating at the smell of these things, but I was like, no, like my body doesn't want that. That's murder. So I was denying this like this deep intuition of like I need that, I want that. Like that's like attractive to me. Like I'm magnetized to it because of my thinking. And eventually I landed in the jungle maybe when I was like 22. And there was chickens on the land that I was staying at. And I saw that all of these chickens were so happy and were just like roaming around free. And every morning they would offer us eggs, the people of the land, they would offer us eggs. And every morning I would deny the eggs. I would say, no, thank you. And I was also noticing that it was hard for me to like find sustenance. Like I wasn't feeling totally full. I wasn't feeling like I was thriving, like I was a little bit fatigued and a little bit cloudy in my mind. And my friend really encouraged me to try eating the eggs. And at that time, like he was mostly vegan, and so it kind of shocked me that he would eat eggs. And one day I had been in ceremony all night and I was really sitting with this. Like, what is food? What isn't food? Like, can I eat the eggs? Like, would that be okay? And the answer was really clear. Listen to your body. Your body knows best. And I ate the eggs that morning at breakfast. And I remember feeling before I like actually put my spoon into the eggs, feeling like my entire world is about to fall apart. Like it's gonna break apart. Like all of my vegan community back home is gonna judge me. I'm not gonna have any friends anymore. I'm gonna be this person who steals eggs from chickens. And then afterwards, after I ate the eggs, it was like everything was exactly the same and nothing was the same at all because I had just satiated myself in a new way that my body hadn't known in a really, really long time. And it was like this light bulb just went on where I felt really alive, like there were more neurons firing, and I was just so attuned to what was around me and within me. And that was the beginning of the end of my veganism.
Yeah.
Um, Slowly over time, like I ended up leaving the jungle. I was back in the States. I started eating some like backyard chicken eggs and quail eggs. And slowly I started like looking for options for sourcing sort of like more ethical dairy. And I was really enjoying it. Like it was really fueling me, but I was still staying really far away from meat. I was like still like, nope, that's not for me. I don't think I'll ever eat meat in my lifetime. I don't think I can do that. I don't want to contribute to an animal's death. And I did a lot of sitting with and thinking that year around like my morals that I had built up in my mind and my ethics. And I just really sat with like deconstructing them all. And I started feeling into all of my experiences that I had had in indigenous culture in nations traveling in Central and South America and recognizing that truly this is a part of the cycle of life and that meat is actually fueling us and that we can work with and eat meat in a really reverent way.
Mhm.
And I still wasn't eating meat though. I was recognizing this and I was feeling in my body that I wanted meat, but I was still denying myself that. I was just like, no, like I can't do that.
That was so deep.
Yeah, it does. It's crazy what how we can let our minds control what we intuitively know we need in our body, but we can let our minds just be like, no, I'm totally ignoring that because of this perceived notion. So the cracking point, this is a really funny story. The cracking
Love the
point was,
story.
so I was at this song gathering, like a 4-day song village in Western North Carolina called Love Song. It's a beautiful gathering. And there was this lunch song circle prayer where we all got our lunch and came to the circle and we were either like silent and eating or someone was sharing a song and we were eating slow and really feeling all of the food and ironically the food was vegetarian. But this one brother, he shared a song and I really wish I knew how it went or the melody or the words because it changed my life. Though it kind of started off with like, I go foraging in the forest for berries and I grow my greens in my garden and I love the vegetables and oh, the fruit, the hydrating fruit. It's just all so amazing. And none of it satisfies my craving for meat. And it just went into this like really long song about all of the different kinds of meat and like how like it's like so natural to like
It's so good.
it's so natural to
In the
want to eat
song.
meat. Yeah, and I was just like, "Whoa, you're so right." Like this entire time what I really needed was permission externally because I needed something to like break down those walls in my mind and I was struggling to do it myself. So what I really needed was someone to like be like, "Here, come sit down with me. Like have this soup that has bone broth in it or here, come sit down with me. Like have you tried this like chicken casserole? Like it's so good." And that song is what gave me the permission that I needed to be like, "Ah, I can eat meat. I can." And as soon as I left that gathering, I went straight to Chipotle and I used to work at Chipotle when I was like 16 or something and I got my favorite bowl from when I was working there, which was a steak bowl. I ate the whole thing like just in my car and it was so good and juicy and it just filled me up in a way that I had not been full in years since I was 17.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this changed my life. And then I went home and acted like I had not eaten meat. I still. And so I think it was another like 3 months that like every 2 or 3 weeks I would go to Chipotle and get a steak bowl.
It's
And and I was just like, I can't let people know that I'm eating meat. And there was also this part of me that was really guilty, right? Because um I had told everyone you can't eat meat. So here I am, hypocritical me, eating meat and loving it. And finally I was able to like tell my family and then start telling my friends. And then I was able to like come into more right relation with the meat too and like go to farms, local farms in the outskirts of Atlanta and find farms that I felt aligned with to source my meat from. And since then, I've been really big on including animal fats and proteins in generally every single one of my meals, at minimum every single day. And I feel like it's just turned me on in the best way possible.
well, it has brought you back to life. The vitality of animals
Hmm.
has brought that vitality back in you. And, two things that you touched on that I want to talk about. One is that feeling of being full. Like I have not been full or satiated in years, right? And it's something that I think about a lot in terms of both you and I are not yet in our motherhood portals, right? We're still in our maiden years. And something that I think about a lot is like the immature slash dysregulated maiden, the maiden that has not come into like her truest, fullest power, autonomy, responsibility, sovereignty, is a maiden that doesn't want to take up space.
Mm.
And a maiden that doesn't want to take up space is a maiden that doesn't want to feel full, and like quite literally doesn't want to nourish and satiate herself. And that's something that I think about, I hear a lot with like vegan and vegetarians, because I was vegetarian for a long time. I think almost, god, like 5 to 7 years or so, kind of blurry, but I remember feeling like, wow, but I feel so light, I feel so good, I don't feel weighed down. And it's like one of those things where it's like, it's good to have meat on your bones, it's good to, for your body to be nourished and satiated and full. Fullness is not a bad thing, it's not something that we need to run from, right? And so that's just something I wanted to touch on, of just the like the maiden coming into her fullness, and also the reality that most women, I think pretty much all women in the United States in Western culture, are grappling with some form of disordered eating. And I know that for me, I did sneakily, subconsciously, but also consciously, and very like in a state of kind of weird awareness, was using my vegetarianism as a way to continue to control and restrict my diet, but in like a moral way, not in like a I'm sick, I have an eating disorder way, but in a I care about the planet kind of way, right? And the other thing of like, listen to your body. I think that there's a lot of vegans and vegetarians that will say, no, but like my body feels really good when I do this. And maybe that is possibly true, but what does your cycle look like? What is your body going to look like after you give birth and your tissues cannot heal and regenerate, and you have severe pelvic floor problems, and you have painful sex for years after the fact, and your marriage falls apart because you're not drinking bone broth, because you're not getting your eggs, because you're not cooking in a ton of butter, because you're not allowing your body to receive the nourishment and the nutrients that animals offer to us lovingly and willingly, right? And so I'd love for you to kind of touch on that a little bit, around any of the deeper psychological aspects that are deeply, deeply programmed and ingrained into women, of like the denial that you bring up a lot, that you were speaking about in your story, not wanting to take up space and accepting like lack of nourishment, like true lack of nourishment. I think
Mhm.
that's a huge thing. Women complain about it all the time. Oh my God, I'm so tired. I have no energy, blah, 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 blah. But then they don't eat meat. Like, what is that cycle that we deny ourselves what our body is intuitively telling us? This is exactly what I need. Oh, but no, morally, like, I'm better than that. That transcendence of the body, right? That ignoring of the body, that downplaying of the body, that disrespect of the body. Like, what is alive in that for you?
Hmm. Yeah. In so many ways, I feel like our mainstream culture in the United States specifically, from a young age, I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, I just know it's happening, is teaching us to live above our necks in our minds, to ignore the body, that the mind and the body aren't one, um, and that like the intellect is what rules everything. And in so many ways, this just disembodies us. And when we're not embodied, I feel like we can't make the best decisions for ourselves. It's hard to tune into what we need and want, and how we can fully nourish ourselves. And yeah, when I was growing up, I was modeled emotional eating, where something felt overwhelming or something was really sad or whatever it was, and food was what could really was suppressing that or numbing that. So I was modeled that way of emotional eating, and when I was in my like mid-teens or so, I started to really numb a lot of what I was experiencing. I had a hard time in high school, and I was numbing a lot of what I was experiencing by overstuffing myself with food, also known as binge eating. And one very key, like biological, physiological part of this is that when one is binge eating, they probably are not getting enough nutrients throughout the day, and their body doesn't have what they need. And then what tends to happen is that the easiest way to like move through that is to binge on um, nutrient poor foods that oftentimes are like calorie dense or just like carb heavy.
Sugar that gives you like the quick fix.
Yes, exactly. And so I found myself in that pattern. And it wasn't all of the time, though it was at times that were really pivotal when I could have sat with my feelings if I had known how to do that. Or I could have explored what was going on, though instead I turned to food. And then I ended up always feeling so sick and so like I couldn't, like I felt like I was needed to explode, like my body hurt. And I would just lay in stomach pain in my bed for hours. Um, and yeah, that went on for a really long time. And it only increased in those years that I was vegan
You,
because I was getting even less nutrients,
you're,
and specifically like minerals and vitamins.
yep, yep,
And at this point, I don't even remember the question, though where I'm going with this is that through one, coming into right relation with my womb and my cycle, tracking my cycle, living from what phase I am in within my cycle, and understanding better how to relate with the world and myself. So that was one really big part of it. Um, I was able to slowly come into right relation with food as well. So it was the coming out of veganism, incorporating animal fats and proteins into my diet, into my daily life, as well as um, tuning into what my womb is speaking to me and following that blueprint, that map that she gives me. I was really able to heal my relationship with food. And now I consistently, on a daily basis, after each meal, I feel full and I go for multiple hours without thinking about food. And then I start to get hungry and I'm like, okay, it's time again. And this is the first time in my life, this last like year or so, since I've been eating meat specifically, that this has been my pattern with food. And it feels so good. It's incredible. I'm so glad I've been able to, figure out what works for me
yeah,
and how to like actually feel totally full. And I really appreciate what you were saying about this like contrast between maybe like a dysregulated maiden who doesn't take up space and who never feels full, in comparison to a maiden who is willing to take up that space and fills herself. And I feel like now I'm at this point in my life where my cup overfloweth because I am nourishing myself so deeply with the vitality that the animals give us. And I'm in this place where I speak my truth with compassion and kindness and love. I take up the space that I need and I can hold space when I need to for others and when that feels available to me. And through this, I can really pour into my community.
yeah,
If I was still vegan and still in this really disordered pattern of eating, I think it would be much, much more difficult to authentically and fully show up for others because I can't even show up for myself.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. And that's what it is to be at this mature maiden phase where you're truly getting to the point where you can shift into motherhood, because there is nothing more heartbreaking than a depleted mother, because mothers are truly like the be all end all of this freaking universe, right? Like a nourished mother who knows how to nourish herself, who knows how to communicate to her community, her family, her partner, what nourishment needs to look like for her in order to be the bedrock and the foundation of thriving life and a culture of thriving life in her family throughout her entire community and to ripple, she has to be able to be in that stage that you were talking about of like, my cup overfloweth. Like, I am so nourished. I am so supported. I am so strong in my body that I am capable of nourishing all that comes through me, particularly my children, right? I'm capable of birthing my children. I am capable of nursing my children. I'm capable of showing up as the mother. And so no maiden can get to that stage of empowered motherhood unless they reach that. I don't like the word empowered. I shouldn't say empowered. In power motherhood, rather, until they get to that stage of maidenhood where they're really like unafraid to take up that space and to receive the support from animals, right? Like, to be in right relation and reciprocity with animals. And yeah, at the end of the day, the most incredible thing would be that we can all live on farms or like be close enough to farms where we know exactly where our meat is coming from and we know exactly how the animals are being treated, and we know that like there is just the most beautiful love and companionship and care that is being offered in that reciprocity, right? And also, we have to be realistic about where we're at right now in human evolution and what we want to orient ourselves towards, what we want to create, and how we're also not willing to sacrifice our health, our long term, like full spectrum female health, women's health. Like, what does it mean to really expand our health out and to recognize that what we do in our maiden years is going to impact us in our mother years and is going to impact us in our grandmother, elder crone years as well. I would love for women to like have that more long-term vision and wider perspective of the choices that they're making now, because it took me years to go through all of the hormonal impacts that my years of veganism, or not veganism, but vegetarianism had on my cycle. Thank
Mm-hmm.
God that I started doing it multiple years before I decided to get pregnant. Like, it's a big undertaking, you know? So,
Mm-hmm. And things in the womb move slow,
yeah.
right? It's like what we're doing now and the way that we're treating our bodies will be reflected in our cycle about 3 months from now.
Yeah.
So it's slow healing, it's slow moving, and yeah, I really like what you're saying about how what we're doing now is going to affect us into our crone years throughout the rest of our life. And that was another really big inspiration for me moving away from veganism, as well as some other habits that I used to have, because I deeply care about not only my health, though I really care about the health of my family that will one day come into being.
Exactly. And that's what it means to think as a mother, even if you're not currently in your motherhood years. That's what it means to transition from that kind of more immature, dysregulated maiden into like, no, I'm stepping up because I know that motherhood is right around the corner. And I'm going to choose to be the mother now to myself so that I can be that mother in the future to my family, to my community, to my legacy, to my lineage, right? It's deep work. It's deep work. And like you said, the womb moves slow. The
Yeah.
womb moves slow, and the womb requires going deep and asking those questions and deprogramming and dusting off and pulling out and cleaning and clearing and really getting to the bottom of like, what does it mean to be in right relationship with myself at the end of the day? What do I deserve?
Whew.
Yeah.
Those are some beautiful guiding questions that I think we can all bring up, on a regular basis.
Cool. I feel like it's time for us to kind of wrap up and transition into our Patreon exclusive episode. Um, Thank you for all of this. I'm excited to continue the conversation over on Patreon. What a gift it is to talk with you. I know that I want to have you on like 1,000 more times because there's so much that we didn't even touch on. I was like, but wait, we have to do this, we have to do
There's
that.
more.
Always time and there's always spaciousness. So I trust that you'll be a more than one time guest on the show. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you? What?
Mm-hmm.
contact you and connect with you?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram as at Ana del Amor. That's ANNADEL Amor, AMOR. And I'm not so active on there. I've been leaning more into the whole just off the grid vibe these days. I'm active in the southeastern United States Earth Skills community. So, Firefly Gathering in Western North Carolina and Florida Earth Skills, I tend to be in those places. And yeah, I'm moving into some other ideas of how I can share myself with the world in a way that doesn't totally require being so active on platforms like Instagram and Facebook. So that's to come, maybe by the next podcast episode that we do together.
Awesome.
And yeah, Clarita, it's been such a pleasure to talk with you. I love our conversations and where we go and what we connect on. So thank you for holding this space on the Serpentine path and yeah, bringing what I feel like are really important stories to light and to a wider audience. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening. Head over to Patreon. You can listen to the exclusive episode, the extended episode that we're going to record right now when we hang up with you guys. So thank you so much for supporting the podcast, and we'll see you very soon. Hmm.